Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. New video on how I made this little commission. So she's a raccoon dog, and it was a request for the customer to have a more grey toned rather than brown tone. So I had the perfect fur for it. It's a one-off piece, so the head is made of polymer clay, the feet are made of resin, so they're nice and sturdy. Yeah, I'll go through the whole process of making this little one. It's got a super cute little face, and I've also made it so you can sort of change the thickness of the head, so you can have it a bit thinner by combing the fur back, or you can make it a bit more fluffy, like that fluffy raccoon dog that you normally see in photos as well. So yeah, a little tip, I'll go into more detail when I'm sculpting, is to just sculpt it a little bit thinner, and then you can have this sort of texture in your faux fur that you add. But anyway, yeah, super cute little critter. I like little face. Okay, you can't see the face, but you'll see in the photos. It's got a cute little face. But yeah, so if you want to know how I made her, then keep watching. Alright, so I initially sculpted this headpiece, which I recorded in another video, so I'll try and remember to link it. I never do, but there's a video on my channel where I go into the sculpting process of this head for the raccoon dog, but I use Sculpey Original for the head and some glass eyes, but all that detail can be found in that video. So once that's been baked and it's ready to be painted, I usually like to prime my pieces before I paint anything. So I prime it with a canvas primer by the brand Derivied Matisse, but you can find any canvas primer anywhere in your local craft stores or art supply stores. So once that's dry, I can go ahead and add any of the paint that I want to add to the face. So it's usually around the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and sometimes the ear area. And given the raccoon dog have little black sort of stripes on their eyes, so I decided to paint a rough shape on the face of where I want the stripes to be, and then of course painting around the eyelids as well. Also paint around the nose in the black colour, so I'd usually do a couple of coats of it just so it is covered. With the final coat being after I've applied the fur to the face. So I'm using a water-based acrylic paint. I use that for both polymer clay and resin, as you can see here. I'm also painting it in resin, so these feet have been sculpted in monster clay, molded in silicone, and then finally cast in resin with that armature piece inside of it. I have tutorials on my channel if you want to know the basic processes. You can find them in my shop at creaturesandthat.com, and they come as a downloadable YouTube video. Yeah, once that's done, I put it to the side and I can start moving on to the body. So as this is a raccoon dog, the customer wanted it to be a little bit more on the grey side, so I thought this fabric would have been perfect for what she requested. So I'm drawing a rough pattern on the backside of the actual fabric, and it's just a pattern that I've created. It's nothing special. I think I used my fox pattern and sort of modified it a little bit just to make it more raccoon dog like. You can see I've had a couple of goes at it, but you know, once you get familiar with patterns, you'll understand and get familiar with the way patterns work and stuff like that. So just have a couple of goes. So I'm using a small pair of sharp scissors to cut out all the patterns from the faux fur. So the point of having small sharp scissors is means you can insert the blades between the pile, and you can only cut the backing of it. So if you just go ahead and cut the fabric, you'll end up cutting that pile off the faux fur, and then it kind of looks a bit crappy. So yeah, you want to insert the scissors in between the pile and just cut the backing. So I'm cutting out all the leg pieces here, and I'm going to blend that black into the grey fur, but I wanted the legs to be a solid grey rather than actually dyeing or painting the faux fur. So what I did was cut out some pieces for the black legs, and then I'm going to sew them onto the grey faux fur, and they will be the legs. And then, like I said, I'll blend in with some fabric paints once it gets to that point. So I'm just pinning everything together, making sure that I sew up the legs onto the body first, so I can then sew the rest of the body together. So I usually use a sewing machine for most of my sewing things. I try and use a sewing machine most of the time just because it's a lot quicker, it's a lot more sturdy, and I hate sewing, so whatever I can do faster, whatever I can do faster, I'll do, but most of the time you'll have to hand sew your pieces to achieve a more refined shape. I need a new sewing machine because this one's really old. So, but it still works great. So you don't need a fantastic sewing machine, just something that can get through the thicker faux fur. So this is what it looks like once I've sewed it all up. Obviously I left the back open and obviously the neck area. I've also left the leg area open so it is easier to flip it the right way around. And that way you won't sort of damage the fabric or anything by trying to force things through a small hole. So basically I just flip it the right way around. Once it gets into the smaller areas, you can grab yourself a blunt tool, like a blunt wooden tool with a round edge, or a blunt plastic tool. Don't use anything sharp because you will pierce through the actual fabric and then you obviously leave a hole inside of the fabric. So I've got a little blunt wooden tool here that I use to just coax the legs through. You can also use needle nose pliers and sort of pull through the fabric on itself. I found those two methods work really well and they don't damage the fabric in any way unless you're really rough with it. But I find those work really well. Just don't use steel tools or something like that. So this is what we have once it's been flipped the right way around. You can see it's starting to take shape, but initially it does look like a big fluffy blob. But once it's all put together, it'll start taking shape and sewn up. It will look more and more like what you're making. So I'm using a ball and socket armature for this particular doll. I have ball and socket armature in my shop because I've had a lot of people ask where I get it from. I've got some in my shop. Obviously I'm from Australia, so shipping might be a bit hello. Check it out, creaturesandnat.com. There's some stuff in my shop as well as the tools. Check it out. I also have some tutorials on how to use this ball and socket armature over on my Patreon for anyone that is interested in that as well. So this particular doll has a ball and socket armature inside, so I've made it up and inserted all the pieces in, and once that's done I can start sewing everything up. So I use a ladder stitch to sew my things up. This is a really good stitch because it's quite strong. When you have the tension pretty tight, it's quite strong. And you want to get yourself a good quality thread, otherwise I find it gets sort of tangled in the pile, and it also snaps pretty easily when you're pulling on that tension. So I use Gutermann thread. I also use upholstery thread, which I find really, really good because you can pull as hard as you like and it won't snap. So once that is all sewn up, I can start gluing all of the pieces together. So I use a tacky fabric glue to attach all of the faux fur to the resin or the polymer clay. I find that works really well and adheres really well as well. So once that's done, I can start trimming everything up and sort of refining the doll a bit more, and also adding the faux fur to the head. Once that's done, I can again refine it some more with a different technique this time, using some fabric paints or normal paint, and just adding some details like markings or textures or creases, stuff like that. And it really brings out the character of the doll once you start adding all of those textures to the faux fur. So in this instance, I added some markings to the face of the raccoon dog to achieve those raccoon-like markings on the eyes. And also the ear area, I added some black as well. But I'm going to be blending in those legs to the grey, like I said before. And, it's a pretty simple process as well. So blending in the fabrics is I'm just picking up some of that fabric paint, and I'm using a brush this time to blend in all of the markings, and I find finger works really well. If you're a little bit sensitive to paints and stuff, I recommend putting a glove or something on, and just there's nothing like using your finger to blend in paint. I think it works really well and it gets in between the pile. And it achieves a nice even coat of the paint distribution on the fabric. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue the markings all the way around that shoulder blade area area, and obviously blend in that back leg area as well, because I don't want it to be a stark black line of faux fur. So yeah, I'm just going to go and blend that in. So that's pretty much the whole process of making this doll. I also added some whiskers to the face just to be a little bit more realistic. Again, I have a tutorial in my shop on whiskers as well if you're interested in something like that. Like I said, this was a commission, so this doll is not for sale, but I have a couple of dolls in my shop at creaturesofnet.com that you can check out, including a flying fox. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for the video. Thanks to my patrons for supporting me. I really appreciate it. If you want to join my Patreon, my link is in the description. You can also check me out on Instagram and Facebook at Creatures of Nat, and also my shop, creaturesofnet.com. And catch you in the next one. Bye bye! Thank you.